Are you ready?
Hey, we're doing it again. Welcome back to Uncarcerated. I'm Lee Scott.
I'm Kevin Scott.
This is my cousin Kevin, and welcome to our show.
This is my son Lee.
This is our new digs here. This is our new, I'll go ahead and get this mic in here that we're not using. These are just props, by the way.
Looks cool.
WGOT in Gainesville and the CMC were gracious enough to lend us their space to do the show, and
it's awesome.
So we'll be doing the show. We'll have guests in here, and sometimes live. This Sunday, we'll have a guest. I'm dating the show, although that's not what we're here to do. But yeah, coming up, we'll have a guest live in the studio. So this is where we'll be each and every week.
I think separately, Civic Media Center is a cool spot to check out. Civicmediacenter.org, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
CMC.org.
it's an amazing place.
Yeah, they do some great stuff here, including Florida Prison Solidarity, which is a great organization that helps connect people to the outside world and fight for people that can't fight for themselves. Obviously, they do books for prisoners, which they were just on NPR this morning locally, talking about books for prisoners. They send books to people inside there, and
Really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I had no
Yeah,
idea. Okay.
they're doing their thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, they were on this morning because right now a lot of the libraries in Florida state prisons are shut down because of COVID. So now is a premium to get new and used books to prisoners, which you can do if you are watching and you feel so compelled to do so. You can send it to 433 South Main Street and care of Books for Prisoners, and they'll get them to people who need them, because libraries being shut down is a huge deal right now.
Yeah. I mean, books for me, at least when I was in prison, were like a huge part of my experience. That was very valuable to me. I learned a lot. It gave me time to sort of like, it's like a little bit of escapism, somewhat of like, reading like a story, get lost in like maybe like a fiction story, but also like separately, there was a lot of like nonfiction and like books that were like super impactful that I had time to read as well. They were like there's plenty of things you can do in prison that are not in your best interest. And I think books are like, one of the exceptions that can actually be like informative while you're there, and then even beyond. Like
You're like a big Stuart Woods guy. That I pegged you for a Stuart Woods guy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
If you don't know who Stuart Woods is, look at any grocery store aisle. They're selling them there for like $2.99. If you write 4 books in a week, they can't be good. Cannot be good. Stuart Woods.
It's just shitting out books left and right.
Stuart. I hope he's not watching this.
No, I mean, I will say like Books for Prisoners is like a really, really worthwhile thing to support. And they need people to help package books, to donate books, like all. It's a worthwhile organization for sure.
We're actually going to do, I want to dive deeper into the book thing, because I think we'll probably do a whole show on how you spend your time while you're away. And one of those I think can stand alone by itself, which is books. I think we need to do a whole show where it's just the prison book club.
Okay.
Because I definitely spent a lot of time reading in there, and some enlightening stuff. And I usually, my habit was to have like 3 books going at once, a fiction, a nonfiction, and then like a biography or something. So, but we just wanted to record a quick show as a disclaimer. So we're going to pin this to the top of the YouTube page, and having done this show for almost a year, and now this is my second show, our second show with Kevin. I feel like we're relaunching the show. It's the beginning of our YouTube experience, and we really appreciate you participating in this with us. We feel like you're not a viewer or a listener, but you're doing this with us. You're taking this journey with us. I mean that sincerely, because I know a lot of people out there have been affected by the criminal justice system and the prison system, whether you are watching this and you have been to jail or prison, on probation, harassed in the criminal justice system, or you're a family member. I know a lot of people have watched this show that are family members. And so I feel like we're kind of all in this thing together. And having done this for a little while, Kevin and I talked, and we wanted to do a little bit of a disclaimer and have that conversation out front, get it out of the way. There's going to be some really uncomfortable conversations on this show. Some stuff's going to be funny. some stuff's going to be poignant. Some stuff may make you cry. It may really touch you. And like Kevin really touches me. But I think that there's going to be some stuff on this show that you don't agree with. And the people that we're interviewing, I think it would be helpful for our listeners and our viewers to come from a trauma-informed place when you're watching this show. So Kevin, can you talk a little bit about what trauma-informed means for our viewers and our listeners? I think that's important that we include that as part of the disclaimer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because of the sensitive nature of what this show covers, that you could almost have just a giant trigger warning over the whole thing. Because yeah, like you said, like there will be uncomfortable things, probably some frank discussions about things that are like maybe painful, things that might trigger somebody's own experience if somebody has received trauma or been the victim of a wrong, that, you know, those things might come up as well. And I think that, like, when I think of, like, you know, trauma informed, I think about like meeting people where they are, being mindful of people's past experiences, taking all those things into account. I think that you know, we're going to have people on the show at different points, maybe even come out of one of our mouths, that, like, you know, something might be said that not everyone supports. You know, like, you may say something that I might not agree with, vice versa. May have a guest on that has a certain perspective or take on their own experience, or the rest of their worldview might not necessarily coincide with ours. But I think what we want to try and do is give all voices a forum to speak, whether we think it's, like, you know, super golden or not, letting everyone have a voice, but with the understanding that not everything that is said is like something that we necessarily endorse.
Yeah, and I think, like, the idea behind the show is, the primary focus of the show is to open up a space that is cathartic, and that people can share their experience in the prison system, in the criminal justice system, and their journey home. And a lot of that can be really ugly and can be very traumatizing.
Yeah, as you were just talking there, like, I know for me, I did not share much of my experience at all. And I think a lot of people do that as well. Like, when they come home from incarceration, they just sort of like bottle it up. When I finally did, you know, let the genie out of the bottle, or, you know, take the cork off, it would be a complete lie to say it came out like beautifully or whatever. Like, there were times where, you know, I went to go see a counselor where I would just go into this office and just bawl my eyes out for like an hour, and just, like, I don't know what was coming out, just blubbering. It may not be always like elegant, it may not be tightly packaged, it might be sloppy, it might, you know, be offensive. I mean, who knows how these things will come out. But I think the good news is, kind of like you're alluding to, like, at least things are coming out. Like, if we, like, continue to, I don't know, discourage or demonize or, like, sort of like stifle those voices from being able to, like, finally express themselves, then it'll be a disservice to the show, to the person. I think we need to hear those voices and give permission for whatever comes out to come out.
Yeah, and I think, like, in creating this space, where it's a complete open forum, you're allowing people to purge, you know, and I think, Kevin, you're right. People are so ashamed and embarrassed and feel so awfully. We heard it last week from Michael about, like, he's in the van, just got, like, the shit beat out of him by the cops, and he's in the van on the way to the jail, and he's thinking about how it affected his family. And so take that idea and extrapolate it out into a broad sense, and you can get a little bit of the idea of how ashamed and guilty and awful people feel about what they did to get into prison, and then the prison experience itself, and then add on top of that all of the misnomers and myths about what happens while you're in prison, and the type of people that go to prison, and the criminal and the convict and all that. And then people just bottle it up, and they don't want to talk about it at all. I remember when I first came home from prison, I moved to another state where I didn't know anybody. And I just didn't tell anyone. Like I acted like I had just moved from another state, and like I was like a new person. Like I just moved here, and like, you know, I was just doing my radio career in Florida a week ago. You know, I mean, I didn't like out and out lie, but like there was a huge omission. And I looking back in hindsight, after several more screw ups on my part, I look back and I'm like, no wonder I ended up like having to have this experience all over again, because I never let it all out. I never purged, and I was walking around with a ghost, basically, you know. And you know, that experience for me is one of the huge inspirations for why I wanted to do this show, because I wanted to create a space where people could do this safely. And not just the political, social justice side of it, where we want to talk about, you know, wrongful convictions, and we want to talk about being coerced into taking pleas, and like all the, you know, mucky stuff that goes into the courtroom, and the, you know, the police investigations and the prison experience itself. That all is part of this. But the bigger part is just letting people talk about their experience openly, and we've got to be able to do it honestly. And yeah, definitely there's a trigger warning, definitely there's a cringe warning. And I wanted us to be able to talk about this before we start getting into all these interviews, so that if you happen to be watching episode 17 of this, that you can kind of refer back to this show and go, oh yeah, they kind of warned us that like this is not going to always be eloquent.
It ain't. A couple of things. One is that, for me at least, the way that I survived a lot of my prison experience was like gallows humor. So like there may be some like laughter at seemingly like very dark stuff. Like there were times where like in prison, and maybe even just in my life in general, where like, there's like, that has really helped me. Like, holy shit, like I can't believe you're laughing at seemingly catastrophic events. Like there's something that has been like informative about that for me. So that might come up as well. You might hear uncomfortable, you might hear laughter at what may seem to be uncomfortable things. You know what I mean? The front in church,
for sure,
whatever it may be. Or on a bigger scale. And then the other thing I thought about too, when you were talking about sort of like stifling your own experience, and like how like harmful that turned out to be, and how you kind of like carrying a ghost around, you're like this like two-legged cemetery. There was a time when I was like near the end, when I was going to leave prison. I knew I was going to be going home, and I was actually like having like a lot of like emotions.
Let me pause you real quick there. The time you knew you were going home, towards the end, like that idea in itself, like you had an end of your sentence. The judge wrote you an end of your sentence, but there you still don't know if you're going home. Like that is so mind-boggling to me, that like you're living years of your life not knowing if you're ever going to go home, even though you have a set date for when you're going home. Can you explain what that means?
I mean, I didn't believe I was home even after I was home. Like that's how shitty it was.
Right.
Like, I think I mentioned, like maybe when we were talking to Mike, like it wasn't until a dog barked at me that I was like, oh shit, like I believe this dog sees me.
Yeah.
It was vivid enough.
I'm a real person.
Like I was like, yeah, it has acknowledged my existence. But even then I was like, there was still like some like shred of like, am I just like hallucinating? And yeah, like even after being home, I was not totally convinced I was home. I'm still not sure. I think I am.
Right.
But anyway, during that period, like there was like that little like window before like going home, I was having like struggles, like emotionally, I was like feeling like all kinds of stuff. Like I was afraid, I was feeling like agitated, like quick to irritability, all kinds of stuff. And so I went to the mental health person at the prison to just like go in and process or whatever. So I went in, I like got into the office with the guy, and I was like, hey, you know, like I'm gonna be going home soon. Like I know I will be, and like I'm just having like a lot of things coming up, and like having like these struggles. And he goes, oh yeah, you gotta stuff all that down. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah. He's like, you can't, like, yeah, you gotta stuff that down. And I was like, I mean, I knew enough from like my history of like being like in recovery and like just like having like therapy earlier in my life. I'm like, I know this is fucking horrible advice. Like this is contrary to everything you should be telling me in this chair right now. and he was the mental health guy. And actually, when I went into his office, I thought like, oh, here it is, finally the one room on this entire property where I can get real with somebody that works
Right.
here outside of
It's
my.
protected by HIPAA. This guy's a
Something.
professional. He's got context. Right. Yeah.
He had letters after his name.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, you got to stuff that down.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you do all fucking day?
Right.
You just tell everyone that comes in here? Like,
Yeah.
like so there was
don't tell anybody that shit.
So like, so that lesson was like, stuff it. So I the rest of my sentence, obviously, like that did not get time to process or have any opportunity to like work through that. And I carried that home, like kind of like you were saying, like just like, let it stew until like a couple years after I'd been out. I was like, I just feel like dying, like I felt absolutely horrible. It has been eating me up. All of that poison I had ingested was just sitting in there like rotting and just sort of like permeating everything I was doing. And until I went and found help in the form of sometimes just going and bawling my eyes out with the counselor. So
yeah,
it took a while.
I had the exact same experience where I stuffed it down. I created a whole other narrative for my life. I had often thought about my life as sort of like a linear narrative, like beginning, middle, end. And that's not really the way life is. Life is much more up and down. And I thought, well, I'm going to create this like story for how this ends, like my wife passes away and I implode and I go to prison, but I come home and I have this like triumphant experience and like I really overcome it and everyone's really proud of me. Right. And that's not how things work out. And as soon as I realized that that's not how they worked out. And by the way, I hadn't dealt with any of the trauma before prison, during prison, or after prison. So now it's just stewing inside of me. And it was, the person I was dating at the time, we went on a whitewater rafting thing, and we get to the park, and to get from where you park to where you would enter the river, you had to ride on a Bluebird bus.
Oh, yeah.
And I get on the bus. First, I didn't want to get on the bus at all. And I got on the bus, and everybody packs in tightly, and they got all their swimming gear.
Oh, because of the bus, because it was a bus. Oh, like a prison, reminiscent of
it
the
was
prison
exactly
bus.
a prison bus.
Yeah.
And she sat down next to me, and she looks over at me, and I'm just like tears just coming down my face. I'm just bawling, crying, And it was at that moment that I realized, like, I cannot walk around like this with all this inside of me all the time, So yeah, like there's going to be some ugly, uncomfortable stuff. There's going to be people on this show that are maybe not as articulate as we are, or as well versed in trauma-informed care and psychology and that kind of stuff. Kevin and I do social work for a living, and so we maybe understand how to convey some of these messages. And we're going to be talking to people who maybe don't know how to do those things, don't have that capacity, or like just their willingness to come on the show and share their story was enough. So and then the other part that I do want to kind of like have a disclaimer about is that we're going to be talking to people from a long, wide range of socioeconomical, political, racial, religious backgrounds. And we're going to have people come on this show. Kevin and I both are staunchly I don't think I want to, yes, I don't want to make speak for you, but like I am definitely pro-feminist, anti-racist. Those type of ideals mean a lot to me. We're gonna have people, right? Yeah, good for you, buddy. Oh, you're super woke. But we're gonna have people on the show that maybe aren't as articulate and maybe say some shit that like, and I am not gonna edit this show. Not because I want people to have a good forum, but because I don't know how to edit. So mainly because I don't know how to edit. No, I'm not going to edit, and we're not going to stop people in the middle of the show and correct them. We're not here to correct anybody. We're going to let people tell their story and give their side as they see fit, and then just lay it all out there because this is their forum to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I echo all of that. If there's a conversation that we can have with somebody in a different setting, perhaps, yes, but I think I agree with you. Like if somebody comes in and has like controversial views, whatever, like that's embraced here too. I mean, we're not trying to like police anybody's thoughts or any of that stuff, especially because, you know, like we've kind of been alluding to here, like so much has been buried for so long, or maybe like somebody just doesn't have like quite the emotional vocabulary to talk about what they're doing, or like has just like a background that's so full of trauma that things just come out in a way that might not look so gorgeous all the time. And I think having room for all of that is actually really valuable and wonderful.
And we're gonna have a whole episode to discuss this last thing, but I do want to touch on the disclaimer. We here at Uncarcerated acknowledge that there are victims in a lot of these things. And we're going to take a whole show to talk about the role of the victim and how all that stuff works, and how victim stance has been politicized by people and the ugliness of that. And so we do want to take time to acknowledge that in a lot of these conversations, on the other side, the thing that you don't see is that somebody has been hurt, including the family members and children and friends of the people that we're talking to. And they know that. They know that. They've admitted it to the person. They've admitted it in court. They've admitted it a million times in countless other forums. This is not that forum. We're acknowledging it, and it sucks. And but this is not a show for apologies and for if they want to talk about that, and if they want to talk about like how badly they feel and like the guilt and shame and inherent stuff that goes with that, that's great. But this is their story and this is their forum, and so we're going to give them the space to do that.
Yeah.
So
I think, I'm sure for some people the remorse, all of that will come up. I think in some cases not, in some cases yes, and kind of like you're saying, it's been dealt with in a different setting, in a different way, or they've already come to terms or made some sort of amends, maybe not. But yeah, I think that's a juicy topic, certainly.
Yeah. It's its own thing. It's going to stand alone. So we just wanted to do that quickly, and hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. And if you do, make sure you follow us, like, rate, and subscribe at the YouTube channel. That's Uncarcerated. You can email us uncarceratedpod@gmail.com. That's uncarceratedpod@gmail.com, and we'll get back with you if you have any kind of information or you want to share your story. We'd love to have you on, and we'd love to have that conversation. And you know, obviously, if there's anything that we can pass along or a conversation you'd like to have privately but not on the show, we're here. I know for me, I'm here and available for that as well. So thanks, Kevin.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yes.
Now I'm going to stand up and hit stop, and you're going to see that because I don't know how to edit. Thanks for joining us.
Later.
That was. See this. Oh, it's hot.
Still recording or not?
Nope.